us with teaching you how to deconstruct the job posting and find their language, find the words that they use. They like those words. They like the terminology, know how they speak and incorporate and speak their language as much as you can so that they'll connect with you. So very good consistency panel. Thank you very much. All right, I think that we had a good story here at the end about an interview that went wrong or an interview that could have been better. So you may all not have an example, but if you'd be willing to share an interview that demonstrated all of the what not to do's or a few what not to do's to just kind of give them a perspective of what not to do.
Okay, well it was a really great day of co-op interviews. So this same day, this student showed up 15 minutes late, which was fine, I had time to have a coffee. Shirt undone, tie half done, listening to music. I had to ask him to take his headphones out. So show up early, but don't be 30 minutes early, because that adds a lot of pressure to our day and feels like we need to expedite things. I recommend 5-10 minutes early. If you're doing an interview at a facility and there's a receptionist there, I encourage you to engage in dialogue with that person, whoever is the first person you're contacting with. Ask good questions, because I can guarantee you as soon as that interview is done, I'm beelining to the front and I'm asking that receptionist, what was your take on that person? Did they ask good questions? Were they engaged or were they on their phone? Like what was their level of engagement when they're there? So those are some of the good things to do. The bad things, don't be late, be tidy. Obviously, if you're applying for a manufacturing type role, we're not expecting a 3-piece suit, but we are expecting you to come, clean and proper, and be prepared with your answers. People have been interviewing for a lot of years, and our creativity of questions is not significant, so you can almost guarantee the questions you're going to get. So I encourage you to have good, valid answers.
For sure, come dressed appropriately. I've had people come in just like a t-shirt and jeans, and that's not very impressive because it is really your first impression. And absolutely echoing Karen's, I talked to the person who you've sat next to, absolutely, because that's the first impression. When we say come with examples, we don't mean that you talk about time management and you say, oh yeah, I had a lot of deadlines, so I met them in school. Okay, can you expand a little further on it? Yeah, I had 4 projects last year. Okay, and there's only so many times where I'm going to try to help you expand your answer, and then at some point I'm just like, okay, we're moving on. So come with your answer fully developed or have a good idea of that, and that goes and speaks to the preparedness. And if you have your resume, probably we have it printed, but it just shows that you're being extra prepared, so we appreciate that.
Just to build on some points they're bringing up, the interview starts as soon as either you walk through the door, or sometimes if you're late. So if you're late, then that's a bad sign. Talking about negatives. Can I use an example of myself where I was?
Absolutely.
I was interviewing for a company, and I walked in the door, and there was a receptionist. I sat down, was focused on not being nervous, and the hiring manager came out, talked with receptionist, tried to engage me in conversation. I wasn't biting. They went back, and then I later realized, oh, I probably should have had a quick chit chat with them. That probably would have helped me. But negatives from the employer side. At the end of the interview, when you're given opportunities to ask us questions, have good questions. Have good questions relevant to the job. But one of the negatives that I've encountered before, not a co-op interview, but just a regular interview, is don't ask if you're tied down to that job specifically, and don't ask if you can kind of float around to other jobs. Don't ask that question in a specific job interview. It doesn't look well for your longevity with the company.
I definitely mirror all the rest of the panel members in terms of what they said. I think one of the things that I would add is be honest. I recently had with University of Windsor co-op students engineering and specifically I often get the answers about the trebuchet or the car projects. I know these projects off by heart at this point in time because I get those type of answers. It was just fine because they're good projects, but somehow I'm going to say probably 95% of the students that come to me somehow are the leaders in their project. And so much so that I actually had a student interviewed at 10 o'clock in the morning. That was the leader, told me about their project. The next interview at 10:30, same group project, same team, both were the leaders. So, I don't know which one was being truthful. Obviously, one of them wasn't. Hard to tell which one, but neither one of them really got the job. So, be honest. I'm not expecting every single one of you guys to be a leader on every single project. There has to be followers, and that's okay. As long as you're contributing to your project, that's what we're looking for. Be honest.
All awesome. Everything what everyone's saying is great. I once had a candidate, we had this question, what was the last book that you read? I'm not going to tell the story that Sue thinks I'm going to tell because that one was a horrible, horrible story. But the other time, so he said he had read a book that I had just posted out online, so on social media, that I had read. And I said, that's fantastic. I just read that too. What was your favorite part? And guess what? He couldn't answer it. So that's that. I also want to take all of us were in your shoes at one point, so I'm going to tell my embarrassing interview story since we're doing that because I think it makes people feel better. Here's my advice that I learned when I was 19. Get to the right company for the interview. That actually happened to me. Back in the day before there was the internet, it was like old school, you wrote things down. My father-in-law wrote down that I had an interview at M Life in Kitchener, and that was awesome because I really wanted to work at Manulife. And I was there 30 minutes early, because that's where I started, 30 minutes early. They couldn't find the hiring manager, and that's when they awkwardly came over and said, you're supposed to be at Mutual Life. And so I still had enough time to get there, got that job, ended up at Manulife doing IT for 5 years. It all worked out, but it was horrifying. And I'm so grateful that I actually got the job. For my computer science grads, I'm hoping one of you are going to make it through and become an Inspire Hubber. And here we do everything virtual. So I'm just going to throw it over to you. When you show up for your virtual interview, please check what's behind you. Please check what's behind you. I once had a person try to tell me how organized they were, and their closet was open, and it wasn't organized. It wasn't even color coordinated, like my closet is, right? It was just a disaster behind him. And the other thing that really bugs me with video interviews, I need to see your full face, not just your forehead. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So I work in a small office. There's 3 practitioners, there's 3 full-time, and there's 2 students. And so we're close. So I'm really looking for the right person. So don't be afraid to engage in conversation. It's not always just me asking questions and you giving an answer. It's really nice to let the conversation flow so I can learn a little bit more about your personality and see if maybe you are someone that would fit in our little culture.
Anything to add?
Yeah, no, actually.
Oh, no, I have more questions.
No, I agree with one of the panelists. Be authentic and be yourself, and honesty goes a long way. Because that's basically who you are, and just like Sarah said, you know, for us, we want to get the right person. So the more we get to know who you are and what you are and what you do, the easier it is for us to make a decision if your skill sets match our company and culture.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing. A few things that stood out to me as I was listening to your responses was the comment about the receptionist. You guys might have remembered from our lesson that in every business, in every industry, there's gatekeepers. Those individuals who are going to be your first point of contact, and know that every person who's in that building is important, and they are someone who might have a contributing voice as to whether or not you join that team. So don't discount anyone, from the custodian to the receptionist to the person you see in the lobby. Always be on your A game when you are going to interview, because they could be the one that discounts you from being invited back. Another thing that stood out was the preparedness. And then I wanted to propose a question to the panelists. we come up with a select group of questions to ask the students in the mock interview. We try to surprise them a little bit, but as you know, many questions are consistent for a reason because we're looking for specific data. Are there any questions that you propose to candidates that are unique in maybe what you're trying to identify or that you find they're not prepared for? I have a feeling we're going to hear some. And if you don't have it, it's okay to pass the mic, but if there is a question that you ask every candidate or one that you like for what it's able to show about the candidate, please share.
I do have a couple faves, I call it, but what I do is I have my typical questions and then I kind of take the energy of the interview and then I get very specific on what I'm getting back. So when they talk about, it's important that we want to see people can adapt and communicate very well in our setting. And so it's important as me interviewing the person that I also adapt. So if I'm going to get the best candidate, I also need to change my questions depending on what's being given back to me. I find sometimes HR just asks their questions and that's it. I need to change with you. So if I see something in the interview that I need to kind of explore, I will throw away my 5 other questions and I'm going to hone in on it. So a lot of times, for example, people talk about in our field, applied anatomy, biomechanics, and so forth, and they'll give their answers. If I feel there's some weakness, or I don't even like to use words, but if I sense there's something that's not there, I'm going to hone in on it. Because from a training perspective, I need to know where's their starting point. And we're not afraid to train people who are green. That's not our worry. We just need to know how to train that person because they're the right fit. And then from there, I know where I can now tell HR, this is where they're at, this is where their weaknesses are, and this is how we can train them to be better in our culture.
One thing we do that's maybe a little bit different from what you've experienced is a group interview. So over the years, we've developed a style of interviewing where we have anywhere from 3 to 11 to 12 people coming for a group interview. Really changes the dynamic. It makes it a lot more fun for me. Very nerve-wracking for people who've never experienced that before, but I really like it. I feel like it takes the pressure off me and allows for more of a conversational kind of interview. So that's something you may not have experienced before.
Glad you said that. Everything we do is panel interviews, so get ready. So we have a very serious question that everybody always laughs at, but it is an internal war in our company, and it actually tells us a lot about you. And the question is this: would you rather fight? Follow me. If you're in computer science, you should be writing this down if you want to interview with me. Would you rather fight one large horse-sized duck, okay, or 1,000 duck-sized horses? And I know, think about it. It sounds, people laugh, but you will be impressed with the amount of theories. Right now, everybody's going, which one do you want? We have amazing answers that come out of that question that shows your logic, how you attack a problem. And you have to imagine a horse-sized duck actually coming after you. That thing can take you out. So I'm not going to let you know which side I fall on because I've got a camp of people on my side. There's another camp on the other side. We have this debate, and when new candidates come in, it's actually one of the ways that we determine what team they're going to be on in the future.
I don't know that I have much to add in terms of extra and unique questions, but I can say that question in particular, at our organization, we actually did a number of different initiatives for Co-op Week last week. And we sat down and interviewed all 8 of our co-op students. And in fact, one of the questions was that actual question. And it's up on our student chose the one large, the horse-sized duck. And it's up on our website. We have all their profiles up there.
It's the 1,000 duck-sized horses, maybe. The ducks are jerks, I think. Anyways, back to the topic. No, we don't have any out there questions, like strange questions. Not that it's strange. It's good to follow people's thought process. We do like the typical interview, like go through your resume, go through your job descriptions that you've had or previous experience. But then we do have like technical questions, and building on like the energy, like you mentioned, sir, the energy of the interview itself. Like how are they answering their questions? Are they do they actually go through have those experiences that they actually wrote down, and we'll start asking more technical questions, and based on those answers, then we'll ask more technical